welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 549 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, none of you guys to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. Let me first say I appreciate everyone that is still here. I know it's been about a month or 3 weeks since I put out an episode. I've been trying diligently to find a better solution because I was unable to record long-standing episodes on my computer, but if I think I found a way. It was a very frustrating time because you don't want to be sidelined and it's not your choice, things have happened. But again, I appreciate everyone and we are back. And speaking of back, you go from someone that's back, myself, to someone that is now gone. I want to start my episode with John Cena. Now, no, I'm not an avid wrestling fan. I haven't really watched wrestling in years. To be honest with you, I haven't watched wrestling since what prime Jeff Hardy days. So I'm not too ingratiated in the wrestling culture at this point in my life. But one thing that I do know is when we have like a Mount Rushmore, and the thing that I enjoy sometimes about those Mount Rushmore conversations is it really shows you how people view something. Like you can ask 100 people, what's their Mount Rushmore of basketball players? Almost probably all of them will have something different. Yeah, there might be a few similarities, but most of them will have a different four. Same thing when we talk about NFL players, same thing when we talk about, I don't know, hockey, baseball, anything. The same is true about wrestling. Hell, my wrestling Mount Rushmore is different than most people's wrestling Mount Rushmore, and it should be because they're probably more entrenched in the wrestling world. And I believe we talked about it on this podcast, but when John Cena announced his retirement, when John Cena announced his retirement tour, everyone from out the woodworks came and discussed how important John Cena was not only to the sport of wrestling, but to their lives. And I brought up the I brought up the Mount Rushmore because if there's one name that you would think would be universal, if there's one name that you would think majority of people would say, not everyone, but majority of people would say John Cena's name is on there. For the longest, John Cena was the face of wrestling. He was the face of WWE. He was the most important figure in wrestling for a while. Let me just read off some accolades. He was a Grand Slam champion, one-time Intercontinental champion, 17-time WWE World Champion, which is the most of all time, 5-time U.S. champion, tied for second most, 4-time WWE Tag Team champion, one of 6 men to win multiple Royal Rumble matches, Money in the Bank ladder match winner, and a 10-time Slammy Award winner, which is Superstar of the Year. I know that there's always going to be a sector of people that doesn't respect wrestling or the WWE. There's always going to be a sector of people that look at the WWE and think to yourself, "Oh, this is just fake. This isn't real. This is scripted," and I understand it. Clearly, this segment is not for that sector of people. This segment is for the people that love wrestling. This segment is for the people that understand the importance that John Cena had and still has, even after his retirement, to the game of wrestling. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't really know much about wrestling. I know, Roman Reigns. I know some current, like CM Punk still wrestling. Cody Rhodes. Like I know some things. I also know how integral John Cena is to the growth, to just where we are as a society when we watch wrestling. How important. I believe if there was no John Cena, there would be no WWE to this day. Now, I do again, I'm not a wrestling watcher now, but obviously when I knew that John Cena's last match was what on the 14th or 13th, I didn't like the fact how I know his mantra has always been never quit, never, and they have him tapping out his last match to wasn't it Gunther or something? That was kind of crazy. I share the frustration that the fans share. Like, how is that the way that you send off one of the greatest wrestlers of all time? I don't know, but I will say congratulations to John Cena on his retirement. This also puts into a lot of or puts into perspective a lot of things in the sense of, yo, these people are still humans, yo. They're getting older. John Cena is almost 50 years old. John Cena can't be like let that man like he's almost there. Same thing. What's the dude name? AJ Styles. He's almost 50. Like there's a shelf life to everyone in this world. More specifically, you can't play basketball your whole life. You can't play football your whole life. You can't wrestle, especially how grueling that sport can be. That's one thing I will say. I was for a very brief time. I was, this is fake. Still entertaining, but it's fake. Yeah, no. The physical grueling nature that WW that wrestling is, I respect it. I may not watch it right now, but I respect it. And I respect John Cena. So congratulations on a very integral career to the WWE. I may not have liked the whole, how he ended, but the fact that he was able to end on standing in front of the crowd in DC, feeling the love, being able to walk off under his own too. There will be as much as people love Roman Reigns, as much as people love wasn't it, Seth Rollins, there will never be anybody like John Cena. And obviously, people will throw out Mr. Hogan. Uh, People will throw out someone like Stone Cold, and understandably so. They were very important to the growth of wrestling. The Rock, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, they were very important to the growth of wrestling as well. So I'm not going to uh, I'm not going to downgrade what they've done or downgrade their importance. But I think outside of maybe Mr. Hogan and Ric Flair, I don't think there's anyone that's been more important to the sport of wrestling than John Cena. Also, when we I know he wasn't the first, but when we talk about the crossover between acting and wrestling, I don't think that there's many people that's better than John Cena. Or let me say this because Batista has been great. The Rock has, he's been hit or miss, but he's still a superstar. John Cena is in that class. I'll say that. I'm not gonna say he's the best, but John Cena is in that former wrestler that turned super movie star. He's in that, especially with his Peacemaker show. So congratulations, John Cena, on a very successful career and a very, hopefully, successful, soothing retirement. Congratulations, and thank you for everything that you have done for the WWE. And let's unfortunately we're gonna have to move forward to a tough topic. The power of winning. We've talked about it on this podcast before. We've talked about what winning does to a psyche, what winning does to a fan base, what winning does to an organization. We talked about how winning allows you to turn a blind eye to certain things because obviously at the time they don't impact winning or losing because you're ultimately winning. One of the best examples or current examples that I can give you is the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics had one of the most expensive teams in basketball. That didn't matter if you were winning championship after championship after championship. They won one. Jason Tatum gets hurt. And then you see people like Drew Holiday get moved. You see Kristaps Porzingis get moved. You see Luke Cornett, or yeah, I think that's the name. He gets moved. I'm almost sure if Jason Tatum was still there and they won the championship last year because obviously he blew his Achilles, we would be looking at them differently. They would probably look much different because you don't have to do much because you don't want to mess up winning. Now, I will say, and I will admit that I was wrong. Jalen Brown has been an incredible number one. I don't know if they're a championship caliber team, as with Jalen Brown being a number one, but he's been much better than I thought he was. But with Jason Tatum's injury, it'll and them not making it to the Eastern Conference Finals due to injury, it allowed people to look at them differently. And it took the winning cover over the team's eyes, like, oh shoot, this is an expensive team. We have to make some moves. You never want to get to that point, but once you do get to that point, it's all about what happens next. And that is exactly what we're going to keep an eye on, and what we have to keep an eye on now with the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to get into, what is it, week 15, 14, 15? And the LA Chargers beats the Kansas City Chiefs 16-13, essentially knocking the Chiefs out of playoff contention. The first time the Chiefs have not been in the playoffs, I believe it says since 2012. I could be wrong on that number, but it's been a while since the Chiefs have not been in the playoffs. But the bigger story is Patrick Mahomes tears his ACL. And what they're saying is it might not just be his ACL, it might be a little bit more than that. But he has had surgery. So I think it's going to be a 9 to 12 month process, hopefully. What has been, in fact, the conversation surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs for years has been, dynasty, has been they're damn near unbeatable, has been, Patrick Mahomes is arguably the GOAT. Patrick, this team, when they get it rolling, can't be stopped. The narratives have flown. And I've been a part of those narratives. And while you can call them narratives, and while we're calling them narratives for this conversation, they have been true. The Kansas City Chiefs have been on a dynasty. Did you know that before this year, since Patrick Mahomes became a full-time starter for the Kansas City Chiefs, he has never not been in the AFC Championship? Even with his young career, he has 3 Super Bowls. And it's not, just due to the success, but he single-handedly made us change how we viewed Andy Reid. Now, don't get me wrong, Andy Reid is an incredible coach, but we look and talk about Andy Reid much different now that he's on the Kansas City Chiefs and all the success that he's garnished compared to when he was on the Philadelphia Eagles as a head coach. when an injury happens, when Jason Tatum goes down with an Achilles, and now the path to winning, the path to a championship is a lot more muddy than you would like it to be. Now, when the dynasty is essentially over, or at least over for this year, this team, the Kansas City Chiefs, that is a playoff staple, is not making the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. Now there are questions that have been rising for years, have to be answered. See, they wouldn't have to be answered if winning was involved. You remember? Do you realize how loud last year was for the Chiefs? And this offseason was for the Chiefs, not because they were bad, but because they didn't win the Super Bowl. All of a sudden you start seeing and you start hearing about the problems that they've been had, which they have had, but you can talk about it because those problems didn't lead to winning. You can say, oh, this is an olding or aging roster, which it is. But when you're not winning, that noise gets louder. They were one of the worst team, or they were 10-0, I believe, in one score games last year. Unheard of. Which is one of the biggest reasons why they made it to the Super Bowl last year. They're not 10-0 one score games this year, and that's why they're not going to make the playoffs. Now you really got to have a conversation, and you really got to address the offensive line that has been porrid for almost 3 to 4 years now. But because Patrick Mahomes and this offense is so great, he makes up and he blankets a lot of issues with this offensive line. Now you have to address, okay, Rashee Rice, he might be a number one on the Chiefs. Xavier Worthy might be a number one on the Chiefs, but they're not a number one anywhere else. Still good players, but they're not a number one. You need to address that. You need to address the fact of this running game has not been good for years. There should be no reason why Patrick Mahomes, who isn't necessarily known as a runner, is one of your top rushing players at the end of the year, almost every season. Now you have to address the fact of this defense is getting old, and some of the players that you paid money to has not produced the way that you would hope they would. Now you have to address what's going to happen with Travis Kelce. Have we seen the last of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, seeing as though Patrick Mahomes is done for the year? Or is next year going to be the last year? But it's like he's been on a steady decline for years now. You see, I keep specifying that it's been 4 years now because it has been. But because winning has blanketed all of this. The noise, while there is still noise, the noise has not been as loud as you would hope for it to be. But like the Boston Celtics this year, this is going to be a very different year next year for the Kansas City Chiefs if Patrick Mahomes is unable to play for a lot of it. Again, they're saying that this is a 12 or 9 to 12 month process. Obviously, they're hoping that he's back from the start of the season, but some people are also saying that he could be back in November. The season looks much different if he goes in the start of the season, week 1, or in mid-November. I hope and pray for a speedy recovery. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. And as unfortunate as it is, getting hurt does, at least for the current iteration, spells the end of the dynasty. On top of that, it's not just because they singularly aren't good anymore. But look at the people around you. The Chargers are having a bad year, and they're 10-4 because of all the injuries. But that's kind of how the Chargers always are. Look at what the Broncos are doing. Look at what the Patriots are doing. If they get it together, look at the Ravens. Look at the Bills. Look at the Houston Texans, arguably the best defense in football. It's not just the Kansas City Chiefs and everyone else anymore. It can't be because the team's not even going to make the playoffs. And modern medicine is incredible, man. It changes the way that we see things. It changes the way that, the speed of recovery. It changes how people recover. So I'm not gonna say he can't come back better than ever, because obviously back in the day when you tore your ACL, especially as a quarterback, that was almost a death sentence for a lot of people. And I also hear the people saying, "Oh well, Tom Brady after year 9 tore his ACL." Let's no. I know that there are similarities to that, but don't expect Patrick Mahomes to come back and break. If he does, I would, I'll come talk about it, but I don't see it. Especially if the team and they obviously got Patrick Mahomes, so that they know how to do some things in the front office. If the team, changes the way that it does things, then maybe if they address the offensive line, if they address the aging defense, if they address the lack of the running game, if they address not having a true number one receiver, we'll see. But if they don't, if they're just like, yo, we're just gonna stay impact until Patrick Mahomes returns, that's not the smartest of things to do, is all I'm going to say. Remember, Tom Brady was able to come back to a Bill Belichick. He was able to come back to a dominant defense. As dominant as the Kansas City Chiefs defense has been for years, that is not that this year or last year, to be honest with you, even though the defense did carry them a lot of times last year. Again, congratulations to the Chargers for beating the Kansas City Chiefs 16-13. I think that it says more about the Chiefs and how bad they've been, because the Chargers, even though they've been winning, they haven't been great either. Because and how most of that is due to injury. But um yeah, we possibly are, and it looks like we're entering a new age for the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll see how it goes. Because that dominance that we're used to seeing from a Patrick Mahomes, from a Kansas City Chiefs, there's no way you can expect that now after what we've seen the last few years, and the fact that Patrick Mahomes' greatness has blanketed a lot of that. Well, he's not there for right now. And there's a shot he may not be the same Patrick Mahomes. We'll see. Obviously, I don't wish that upon anyone, because you also see a lot of people hate dynasties. A lot of people hate dominance if it's not their team. So you saw a lot of people celebrate. You didn't see a lot of people celebrate Patrick Mahomes being hurt, but you did see a lot of people celebrate the fact of the Kansas City Chiefs will not be in the playoffs this year. First time since at least 10 years, I think. So, congratulations to the Chargers for beating the Kansas City Chiefs 16-13. Another injury that I believe is going to shape the rest of the season happened in the Denver Broncos Green Bay Packers game. The Denver Broncos beat the Green Bay Packers 34-26. Let me first talk about the Denver Broncos. I have been very vocal in the sense of I believe that the Denver Broncos aren't as good as we are seeing. I'm not, or not we're seeing. They aren't as good as their record may show. Now, I'm not taking anything away from their defense. In fact, on the contrary, I think their defense is the main reason why they are 12-2 right now. I think you can put it's a competition between the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos on who has the best defense in football. the Denver Broncos defense has been so great as well as the Texans, but the Denver Broncos defense has been so great that it allowed below average to damn near poor offensive showings, and they still get the win. That's just how great they've been. And their best defensive player, Patrick Surtain, wasn't playing for a good minute due to injury. I saw that to say this game was probably the most complete game I've seen from the Denver Broncos in a good minute. Maybe the best game they've had all year. When we talk about the offense complementing the defense. Bo Nix was incredible. 23 for 34, 4 touchdowns. Everything that they needed to do, they did. Cortland Sutton had 7 receptions for 113 yards and 1 touchdown. Like they were great. The Denver Broncos that we saw on Sunday, if they play that balanced, if Bo Nix is able to play that well, if the offense is able to continue to be great, I wholeheartedly believe this team can win the Super Bowl. I wholeheartedly believe that the team that we saw on Sunday, I know this is going to sound cliche and it's going to sound dumb, but that is the 12-2 team. Not the Denver Broncos that they've relied so heavily on their defense. Bo Nix he threw for 302 yards. That was an incredible game. That was a complete game from the Denver Broncos. And again, if they continue to bring that, that is the team that could very well win the Super Bowl. Not just make it, could win the Super Bowl, win the AFC, win the Super Bowl. That team that we saw on Sunday. Now let's transition over to the Green Bay Packers. I've said this before, but before the Micah Parsons trade happened, I did not have the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl. I thought that they were a good team. I thought that they had the pieces, they had the names to be explosive. I just didn't think that they were complete enough to win. But that was until they got Michael Parsons. And I felt that they had a dominant player on the offense. They had a dominant player on the defense. They had a player on each side that could take over and win you a game. And we've seen it throughout the year. We've seen the offense be poor, but Michael Parsons have a game. Michael Parsons single-handedly wins the Green Bay Packers game. We've seen that this year. We've also seen games where the offense or the defense is struggling and Jordan Love goes crazy and wins them a game, or Josh Jacobs goes crazy and wins them a game. We've seen that. But more times than not, we've seen the offense be sporadic. More specifically, Jordan Love be sporadic, but the defense is steady. And the defense keeps them in games. And the defense wins them the game. We've seen that more times than we've seen balance. Well, Michael Parsons tears his ACL. And I hope for a speedy recovery. I don't want anyone to be hurt. I don't want anyone to, you know, these are people we're talking about. I know we get blinded to the fact that this is technically a game, but these are still people we're talking about that have lives. So I hope and pray for a speedy recovery when it comes to Michael Parsons. But with Michael Parsons being out, this is what it does to the Green Bay Packers. The most obvious thing is it takes away their best defensive player. You still have Xavier McKinney, you still have Rashad Garrett, you still have good players. But let's not mince words here. Michael Parsons is their best defensive player. It takes him out the equation. It takes a finisher out the equation. Let me give you an example. You remember 2017? Was it 2007? It might have been 2017 NBA Finals. You had the Golden State Warriors going up against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I believe it was game 4. As great as Steph Curry was, game 4, he was awful. Like absolutely horrible. I think he only hit 1 3. It was bad. But they had a closer in Kevin Durant. And as bad as Steph Curry was, Kevin Durant was incredible. Golden State ended up winning that game and winning the NBA Finals in, I believe, 5 games. If it wasn't for Kevin Durant and his greatness in game 4, Golden State probably would have still won the finals, but they would not have won game 4. What it does is it gives, when you have a closer, when you have someone as great as a Kevin Durant, it allows you to you can afford a bad game from one of your best players in Steph Curry. When you have a player as great as Micah Parsons, it allows the offense to maybe have a bad game. It allows Jordan Love to maybe have a bad game, for Josh Jacobs to maybe have a bad game, because you're always going to have that closer on the defensive side of the ball in Micah Parsons. Well, he's gone. Torn ACL, out for the season, which means the margin of error has shrunk to nothing. The Green Bay Packers, who, might I add, even though they are in the playoffs now, they could very well, when you look at the Lions schedule, when you look at the Bears schedule, the Packers can very well not make the playoffs. And now you're relying on an offense, you're relying on a player in Jordan Love who has had a propensity to be out of control at times. Not steady, erratic. Do I think they still have the talent? Yes. They still have the talent. We'll see what happens with Christian Watson, who is unfortunate, but he just can't stay healthy. They still have the talent. But do they have the person that can maximize that talent? Because they've lost their closer. They've lost inarguably their best player on the team. Obviously, looks like both of my Super Bowl picks may not even make the playoffs in the Packers and Ravens, but that's what happens when your closer, when your best player goes out. You can still win. It's just the margin of error has diminished to nothing. You can't make a mistake. You can't drop a game. You can't have a bad turnover. You can't have a pick set. You can't. That's gone because you don't have anybody on the back end to erase your mistakes. And because of that, I don't know if especially what we've seen this year and last year, I don't know if I trust Jordan Love enough not to make those mistakes. Because even in this game, he threw 2 interceptions. Something, like I said before, Jordan Love has turned into a better Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going to give you one or two. Just got to catch him. But congratulations to the Denver Broncos for beating the Green Bay Packers 34-26. And for Micah Parsons, I pray for a speedy recovery. I know I've said on several occasions this year that the key to winning for the Buffalo Bills, the key to putting themselves in prime position to possibly compete for a Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills is not Josh Allen, but James Cook. And I didn't realize when I said that, I think the beginning of the season, how right I would be. And I also didn't see just how I knew Josh Allen was important. I mean, we know Josh Allen's great. I just didn't think that the team around him was going to be so poor that he and James Cook, I'm sorry, had to carry that heavy of a load. The Buffalo Bills complete a epic comeback against the New England Patriots. At one point, the Patriots were up 21-0. And the Buffalo Bills came back and won 35-31. Now, I'm not going to go as far as Dan Orlowski saying that Josh Allen should be the front runner for the MVP. But this is yet another game. We've seen this now 3 times this year where Josh Allen has put the team on his back and led them to victory. We saw this game 1 against the Ravens. I don't remember exactly who it was right now. The second time, I'm gonna remember, and the third time was this game. Let's not get this confused. No, this isn't a death wish. This isn't a killing game for the New England Patriots, but this was an uber important game for them. This would have been the first time since I believe Tom Brady was the quarterback where the Patriots would have swept the Buffalo Bills in the regular season. I'm not saying they would not have made the playoffs, especially being what 9-5 if they would have lost, but the path to the playoffs would have been a tad bit more interesting for the Buffalo Bills compared to now with them winning. On top of this, there is a good avenue, a good path for the Bills to win the AFC East. Something that the Patriots have not done since Tom Brady. I will say this. This is starting to shape up to be a very, very important offseason for the Buffalo Bills. Because there is a good chance that when we talk about the pantheon of quarterbacks, when we talk about the best quarterbacks in the league, obviously the names that we say, the top 5 that we say is Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and you can pick the 5th between Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, Jalen. You can pick the 5th. But the big 4, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. Not necessarily in that order, but those are the big 4. 3 of those 4 quite possibly might miss the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes already out and he's injured. Joe Burrow, we'll talk about in a second. He's done or the Bengals are done in the playoffs, eliminated. And the Ravens, they need to essentially win out or win most of their games, and they need the Lions to beat the Steelers. So there's a good shot that Lamar Jackson might not make it. Patrick Mahomes definitely is not going to make it, and Joe Burrow's definitely not going to make it. So Josh Allen would be the only one. This is shaping up to be a very important and almost a mm, which is why I feel some type of way about the Ravens. But hey, when we talk about this game and going back to what I said originally about, the key, there have been several times, maybe too many times, where Josh Allen has to put on his Superman cape and lead them to victory. Yo, they went 5 straight drives with a touchdown. That is incredible. Um, James Cook had a great game too. 22 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Buffalo, I don't think Buffalo is a good team, but they have two equalizers. They have Josh Allen and James Cook. I mean, their top receiver Shakir Shakir has 65 yards, 5 receptions. And from the New England side, I know Stephon Diggs said, we needed this loss. No, you didn't. This was a very important win for the Patriots. However, this is one of the first games where you the defense wasn't able. It's the Patriots have kind of played the same game that the Broncos, that the Houston Texans have played, in the sense of their offense just needs to be okay because their defense has been incredible. Well, their defense didn't have it this game, and you needed someone like Drake May to help. Even though Trayvon Henderson, I'm sorry, he 14 carries for 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was incredible. But when you look at Drake May, 14 for 23, 155 yards and 1 interception, that's not going to get it done. Not saying that they were terrible. They just ran into a buzzsaw that was the second half Buffalo Bills. More specifically, Josh Allen and James Cook. This is also a very important game and could possibly be a huge loss because of who they play next week or this week, and that is a desperate Baltimore Ravens that looks like they're kind of rounding into form. So now you go from a Bills team that looked dead until they didn't to now having to play a desperate Baltimore Ravens team that looks like they're rounding into form. We'll see. And the New England Patriots look much different as the number 1 seed, which they have relinquished. They're not the number 1 anymore, compared to what, third or fourth, maybe fifth. And there's a shot for them not even winning the division, which means that you could very well have to play someone like the Buffalo Bills for a third time, or um, the Baltimore Ravens away, or the Steelers. We know. I'm just saying. Congratulations to the Buffalo Bills for beating the Patriots 35-31. We talked about the Baltimore Ravens, and we talked about desperate, being desperate, right? The Ravens shut out the Cincinnati Bengals and beat them 24-0. It was cold, and Lamar Jackson didn't have to do much. He only threw the ball 12 times. He had eight. He was 8 for 12, two touchdowns, one interception. But the interception, which I hate that it's a quarterback stat, but the interception, yo, the ball hit Zay Flowers in the chest, bounced off. The defender caught it. Zay Flowers also dropped a clear touchdown. It was in his hands. So it could have been 31-0. But hey. Um this is coming off the backs of I think this game spoke it spoke a lot about both teams. Joe Burrow, 25 for 39, 225 yards, two interceptions, one of which being a pick six. Kyle Van Noy caught it in one of the best plays you'll see all year. Kyle Van Noy caught the interception and saw I forgot his name, homie. That's much faster than him. He pitched it back, gave it to him, and ran it for a pick six. Let me just talk about the Ravens first. This game was uber important. This game they just beat you by like 21 uh on Thanksgiving. The margin of error, kind of like we were talking about with the Green Bay Packers, the margin of error is slim to none when we talk about the Baltimore Ravens. And essentially, you're going to need to win. You can only drop one game, and that one game cannot be the final game of the season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But and you really you're going up against the division leading all the games that they have left are division leaders, I believe. They have the Green Bay Packers, they have the New England Patriots next on Sunday Night Football, and they have the Steelers. If they win all three, they're in prime. I mean, they make the playoffs. If they win two out of three, they're going to need the Lions, I believe, or the Lions or Browns to beat the Steelers, and they need to beat the Steelers last game. They lose two out of three, it don't matter. Game's over. So the Ravens are now in a position where now I didn't realize until they said it in this game. Lamar Jackson and before this game, Joe Burrow was undefeated past week 15. That's crazy. Um, but yeah, if the Ravens are starting to round in the form, I think we're gonna tell a lot about the Ravens because the Bengals aren't that great of a defense, and Joe Burrow didn't play good at all. If the Ravens, we're gonna tell a lot about them when they play Sunday Night Football this week against the Patriots. So they did what they were supposed to do. Congratulations to them. Now let's talk about the Bengals, and more specifically, Joe Burrow. This is coming off of questionable comments that Joe Burrow made about, the happiness and just and him not having fun. That off those comments, that's why this loss was monumental to me. Not because you know it's the Ravens divisional opponent, but the fact that Joe Burrow had his worst game of the year. I know that he missed a bunch of time, but he had his worst game of the year this game after those comments. And I'm not gonna say lifeless, but it just he didn't play well at all. And you would think after those comments and after a week of practice, you think that he has something to prove, and they shut that down quickly. I know when we talked about Kansas City Chiefs, and we said that winning blankets a lot of stuff, but once you lose, Um, it kind of unveils a lot, and changes need to be made. Well, the complete opposite is sort of on the Cincinnati Bengals. They haven't really been winning. I know they went to a Super Bowl, and people keep hanging their hat on that, even though they lost that Super Bowl. And Joe Burrow went to back AFC championships, but all they've had, and I talk about this a lot, the Cincinnati Bengals have built their team like a basketball team. You pay top three players, and everyone else just gets essentially crumbs, which is why there's always issues on the defense side of the ball, always issues contract wise. Like, come on, bro. Major changes need to come. It would be almost malpractice if you look at this roster and think to yourself, you know what, we just need to run it back. We don't need to work on the offensive line, seeing though Joe Burrow almost always gets hurt. This is the third year in a row the Cincinnati Bengals don't make the playoffs with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson. Third year in a row. We talk about, Joe Burrow being the top four, one of the top four quarterbacks, and he's the only one out of the top four that consistently cannot get his team into the playoffs. Major changes need to come. It would almost be malpractice if we look up week one and this roster is very similar to what it is now. Because one thing that having Joe Burrow was supposed to do is it's supposed to um give you a shot once you get to the playoffs, which is why you heard all last year, oh no, if we get there, we have a shot. Joe Burrow would have won the MVP if the team would have made the playoffs. He had better numbers than Lamar. He had better numbers than Josh Allen, who essentially won it. He had better numbers than all of them. Hell, I think Jamar Chase won the Offensive Player of the Year. Or no, he was runner up to Offensive Player of the Year because he had the triple crown. So for as great as the season that Jamal, whoa, Jameer Jameer Chase had and Joe Burrow had, they had nothing to show for it outside of Joe Burrow winning Comeback Player of the Year for a second time. Major changes need to come. This is again third year in a row that someone as great as Joe Burrow does not make the playoffs. Major change need to happen. But congratulations to the Baltimore Ravens for beating the Cincinnati Bengals 24-0. This was one of the best games and one of the more anticipated games, in my opinion, of the week. And that was the Rams going against the Detroit Lions. The Rams ended up beating the Lions 41-34. Both Jared Goff went 25 for 41, 338 yards, three touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, 24 for 38, 368 yards, two touchdowns and an interception. Jameer Gibbs only had 13 carries for 38 yards. Puka Nakua, nine receptions for 81 yards, and Amara St. Brown at 13 receptions for 164 yards. This felt like two teams that were almost looking each other eye to eye. And it was the deficiencies of the Lions and their defense is not good. Not necessarily because they're just not good. It's because this is yet another year where damn near their entire defensive side of the ball is decimated by injury. Um, which it's almost unfathomable, kind of like the Buffalo Bills, to think that this offense can carry them on a deep playoff run, especially when you're looking at the Rams that are. Damn, I know we talk about their offense a lot, which is explosive. They have arguably the best wide receiver in the league this year in Puka. Matthew Stafford's probably going to win the MVP, but their defense is great too. Um, Now I know he's week to week, so I'm glad it's nothing major, but Devontae Adams plays a huge part in not just the greatness of Puka Nakua this year, but the importance of this offense. Well, he had a hamstring injury. I think he pulled his hamstring, so that's going to be huge. Um, but as fully healthy as currently constructed, I don't see a team in the NFC outside of maybe the Eagles, which we'll talk about. I don't see a team that can or that's looking eye to eye after this week with the LA Rams, especially when they're fully healthy, because they can beat you. They can beat you on the ground with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. They can beat you in the air. Matthew Stafford, Puka Nakua, um, Devontae Adams when he's healthy, and they can shut you down defensively. I know they scored 34 point or the Lions scored 34 points on them, but the Lions are a great the Lions are a great offense. So yeah, that's this was a heavyweight fight. I mean, at one point Detroit was up by 10, and then the Lions or the Rams had like a 17-point third quarter. Then they went up by 10. It was back and it was a great game. Congratulations to the Rams for beating the Lions 31 or 41 to 34. All right. The word that heard since the Bears beat the Browns 31 to 3. The word it's not just this game, but one word that's permeated around the Browns have been sabotage, and how there have been some questionable decisions that can lead you to believe that someone on the Browns organization could possibly not want the best for Shadur Sanders, i.e., sabotage. This game, I'm not even going to talk about the myriad of things, but this game, you take his wristband that has all the plays on it, and you put in plays, wrong plays, different plays that he doesn't know, plays that the team don't know, and you gave him quote unquote the wrong wristband. I don't know, and I've never heard that before. Never, ever. It is it's been apparent, but I guess at this point I'll say that week after week just clarifies the fact that Shadur Sanders' future cannot be in Cleveland. Even if they trade or fire Stefanski, I don't think Shadur can succeed in Cleveland. If Jerry Judy is his number one receiver, dropped yet another pass. Now, don't get me wrong, Shadur Sanders didn't have a good game. 18 for 35, 177 yards, three interceptions. Two of those interceptions necessarily wasn't, well, two of those interceptions was his fault. One of them was not. It was Jerry Judy. Shador could not have thrown a better pass, and Jerry Judy just missed it. Shador Sanders' future, at least successful future, in my opinion, is not in Cleveland. Um, yeah. Now the Bears. This is yet another game where I mean, Caleb Williams, 17 for 28, 242 yards. He played well. DJ Moore went crazy. He had an incredible catch for a touchdown. But hey, who knows? Congratulations to the Bears for beating the Cleveland Browns 31 to 3. Let's go all the way back to Thursday night football. Let me first say nobody clearly wants to win the NFC South. We're going to talk about the Saints and Panthers in a little bit, but clearly nobody wants to win the South. You might have a clear path. All you have to do is win maybe a game or two, and somehow the team always seems to mess that up without fail. The Falcons beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 29-28. I said this on Twitter. Anytime Steph Curry sees De'Aaron Fox on the schedule, he turns into, I don't know if he goes into the Lazarus pit. I don't know what he does, but he turns into vintage 2016, 2017 Steph Curry. And look at some of Steph Curry's best games. Look who the point guard is on the other side of that. There's two people that Steph Curry just enjoys playing. Two guards. One of them is De'Aaron Fox. The other one is Damian Lillard. When he plays Portland with Damian Lillard, or when he plays against Damian Lillard and he plays against De'Aaron Fox, he goes to the Lazarus pit and just torches them. In football terms, anytime Kirk Cousins sees the Buccaneers on his schedule, he turns into Kirko Chains. Kirk Cousins, 30 for 44, 373 yards, three touchdowns. By far the best game Kirk Cousins has had since last time he played the Buccaneers, when I think they scored or he threw 500 yards. This is also not just his best game, but one of the greatest games that a tight end has ever had. Kyle Pitts, 11 receptions for 166 yards, three touchdowns. Mind you, Kyle Pitts has had such a rocky career. This was one of the greatest performances from a tight end. I'm not going to kill the Buccaneers, but what I will say is this: injuries seems like they've derailed this Buccaneer season. Not saying that they can't win the NFC South. Not saying that they won't be in the playoffs. But if they go to the playoffs, I don't know. They went from possible dark horse to, I think teams, because of injury, want to see the Buccaneers in the playoffs. They don't scare anybody. Baker Mayfield, you can't play. You have to play mistake free football, which he's unable to do. 19 for 34, 277 yards, remember he was a front runner for the MVP? Yeah, man, don't nobody want to win the NFC South, man. Congratulations to the Falcons for beating the Buccaneers 29-28. Yo, talk about greatest. Trevor Lawrence had the greatest game he's ever had in his life. Trevor Lawrence, one of the biggest knocks on Trevor Lawrence is he got paid off of potential. And when people talk about him, they talk about his quote unquote potential. Same thing they talk about a lot of times with Justin Herbert. They talk about how great he is, how good of a skill set he has. Um, but they mainly talk about the potential. And the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. This game, the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Jets 48-20. He had a near perfect game. He had the greatest game he has had, at least on the pro and college level, and he's won a national championship. Trevor Lawrence went 3 or 2 20 for 32, five passing touchdowns, and one rushing touchdown. He had six touchdowns on the day. Rushed for 51 yards and passed for 330 yards. So if we're doing math, he totaled 381 yards, six touchdowns. Greatest game he's ever had. Now, I'm not expecting, and no one should expect, Trevor Lawrence to have six touchdowns every game. But if this is the Trevor Lawrence that we're getting, that could now very well, the Jacksonville Jaguars could very well win the South, NFC, AFC South. If this is the Trevor Lawrence we're getting, again, not expecting six touchdowns, but being decisive with the ball, uh, completing, playing great. Jacksonville Jaguars, they're a scary team. They're not a team that you want to see in the playoffs. If that's the Trevor Lawrence that you're getting. Again, congratulations, bro. He had one of the best seasons or best performances he's ever had. And the Jets, I don't even know who they were. Who was their starting quarterback? 22 for 33, 176 yards, one touchdown, three interceptions. Yeah. We don't need to sit on this for long. The Eagles beat the Raiders 31-0. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, the Raiders are back." I mean, no, the Eagles are back. The Eagles are back. Slow your roll. They played the Raiders. They played Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett didn't listen to these stats, bro. Kenny Pickett was 15 for 25 on the entire game, 64 yards, one interception. Aston Genty had 9 carries for 35 yards. Bowers had 6 receptions for 28 yards. If you want to put all three of those together, that does not even equal up to 150 yards. They played a terrible team. You got Max Crosby yelling at Levante David or Devin, but one of them two. It's not. I'm not gonna say. I will say Jalen Hurts did have a good game. 12 for 15 for 3 touchdowns, 175 yards. But they did what they're supposed to do. They beat on a very bad team. So 31-0. Shout out to y'all. Hey, if I had my podcast, I would be on the table. I wouldn't be as vehement in voicing my frustration as Ryan Clark was, but I did think it was crazy that all the people that they could have called, they called 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. Now, people were like, well, they didn't call Cam Newton because he wasn't part of the system, and that's why they called Phillip Rivers. Why didn't they call Matt Ryan? Hmm? Why Matt Ryan was part of the system? Why didn't they call Matt Ryan, who is younger than Phillip Rivers and has a Super Bowl? I mean, no, has a MVP. I thought it was insane that they not even thought about, but went along and started 44-year-old quarterback that was retired for like 4 or 5 years, coaching high school football, Phillip Rivers. I will say though, I may have been a little off. He looked a lot better than I thought. The Seahawks beat the Colts 18-16. He looked a lot better than I thought. Now they were smart. They they didn't make him pass that much. Jonathan Taylor had 25 carries. A lot of his passes were dinks and dunks, but he did have a touchdown. He did throw for 120 yards, something Kenny Pickett couldn't do. He did have a touchdown. Now he did have a game sealing interception, but I was wrong. I was wrong. Now, yet another game. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 100+ yards on seven receptions. This is yet another game where I don't think I know the Seahawks didn't score a touchdown. Look, you can't have that. Oh, sorry. You can't you're about to play the I believe they're about to play the Rams. If you think you're about to beat the Rams not scoring a touchdown, you have this is part of this is part of the issue last year with Sam Darnold. He started falling off the end of the year when he going against good teams. About to see. About to see. But congratulations to the Seahawks. And you know what? And I'll say congratulations to the Colts too, bro. Like again, I didn't think that was gonna work, and I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen next week, or this week, but I didn't think Phillip Rivers was gonna look as good as he did. I was wrong on that part. I was wrong. I still think it's crazy that your only call was really Phillip Rivers, but yeah. Um, but congratulations to the Seahawks for beating the Colts 18-16. Boy, Cowboys. The Minnesota Vikings go into Jerry World and beat the Cowboys 34-26, which essentially it's not completely over, but essentially put the Cowboys playoff life on extreme life support. They have a 1% chance of winning or making to the playoffs. I think they need to win all their games and the Eagles need to lose all their games. Mind you, almost every graphic that we saw this year of JJ McCarthy has been right next to Jamarcus Russell. And I said vehemently, if there's one person that you do not want to be on the same graphic as in the NFL, that is Jamichael Russell. Jamarcus Russell. JJ McCarthy's name and picture was always JJ McCarthy, 15 for 24, 250 yards, two touchdowns, and an interception. Dak Prescott had 23 for 38, 294 yards. Wasn't enough. Boy. I will say that this will be the first year, and I don't remember how long that the NFC East has always had for the longest has always had a different winner. And that streak is snapped. But boy, because I don't foresee the Eagles losing the rest of it. Losing if they win one game, Cowboys are done. Um, you let the Vikings come and just embarrass you like that. Boy. And now, if you really think about it, I don't know if George Pickens is coming back next year. I don't. I think they're probably going to try to tag him, but like you know, who knows, man. Congratulations to the Vikings. The Cowboys suck. The Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Dolphins on Monday Night Football 28-15. A couple of takeaways. At some point you have to your play, your wins or losses has to quiet your doubters, right? Has to quiet the narrative, has to change the narrative. The narrative around the Dolphins has been not just since Tua, but for the longest has been they cannot win in cold environments. Obviously, they're in um, they play like in a retractable dome, I think, and they're in the Hard Rock, I believe, and they play in Florida. Every single time they go to a cold place, they suck. Well, Tua wasn't terrible, but Tua was god awful when it came to pressure. He could not read, he could not dissect pressure to save his life on Monday Night Football, bro. Um, and I didn't. Troy Aikman said something. I didn't understand the lack of urgency. You're down what 21-3 at half. There was no urgency from the Dolphins. Maybe they're playing for a play or playing for a draft pick. I don't know, but there was no urgency from the Dolphins. You cannot and will not win anything that you're hoping to win with Tua as your quarterback. And it's starting to feel like Tua is going to be gone and not Mike McDaniels or McDaniel. But I feel like they both got to go because. And the thing is, bro, the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't even play that well offensively. I know, damn, Aaron Rodgers only missed 4 passes, but Kenneth Gainwell was the MVP of this game. DK Metcalf had the highlight when he tossed that man. But I don't know, bro. I think to be honest with you, the fate of the Steelers and the Ravens making the playoffs comes down to next week and the last game of the season. Next week, I think the Steelers play the Lions and the Ravens play the Patriots, two pretty good teams. I think if whoever wins that, and then they have to play, you know, if the Ravens can beat the Patriots and the Steelers can beat the Lions, because the Ravens still have to play the Green Bay Packers, so we'll see. But the congratulations to the Steelers for beating the Dolphins 28-15. Like I said before, no team, no one wants to win the NFC South. Uh, yo, Carolina, you talking about a missed opportunity? All you had to do was beat the Saints. At the time, the 3-10 Saints, and you would control your destiny to make the playoffs, and you lose. You you lose. You lose 20-17. Tyler Shaw had a game, 24 for 32, 272 yards. He also was the leading rusher with 32 yards. Bryce Young didn't do enough, 15 for 24, 163 yards and a touchdown. I don't know how some of that was bad coaching too cuz what was yeah, bro, don't nobody want to win the NFC South cuz how? You have a prime opportunity to beat a 3-10 team and you lose, Carolina. Mm, mm, mm. Um, the Houston Texans beat the Cardinals 40-20. I feel like the Texans kind of needed one of these games, man, where they just beat up on a lesser opponent. Um, I think that major changes need to come for Arizona. What direction are they going in? I know they have Marvin Harrison. I know they had McBride, but where are they going? I think major changes need to happen, and the Houston Texans are kind of rolling right now. Offensively, they looked pretty good. This was probably one of the best offensive games that we've seen from them in a minute. Well, probably since the Ravens game, but obviously a bunch of players were hurt. Um, the Texans play well, and they beat up on a lesser team. So, and again, I think that just major changes need to happen in Arizona because I know Kyler probably gonna be gone. Yeah, they just need to blow it up, man, for real. Speaking of blow it up, the 49ers beat the Tennessee Titans 37-24. They need to blow it up in Tennessee as well. Probably keep Cam Ward because he's the best thing you got, but that's all you got actually. No, Calvin Ridley's out for the season. Coach ain't the interim coach ain't good. Tony Pollard didn't do. I mean, he had a touchdown, but okay. It's not good. Tennessee is one of the worst teams in football. Let's just keep it a bean. Like they actually are the worst team in football if you look at record wise. And the 40 like the San Francisco 49ers did what they were supposed to do. They went into or they had a lesser team coming in and they beat the brakes off them. So, you know, I am interested to see if Brock Purdy can lead this team to like a deep playoff run, but I know they can beat the Tennessee Titans. So yeah, shout out to them. And lastly, the Washington Commanders beat the Giants 29-21. The best news I heard out of this game was that Jaden Daniels is out for the season. I don't know why we started. I talked about it. I don't know why we started him a week ago. Uh, we're not doing it. We're not going to make the playoffs. We're not going to make no run. Let him sit. Let him rest. Uh, I don't know why we won this game if we're trying to do draft position, but it is what it is. Jackson Dart's not that good. Um, 20 for 36, two touchdowns, 246 yards, one interception. Not great. The offensive line is not great either, but you know, that's what it is. So congratulations, Washington. Marcus Mariota didn't play that bad, actually. 10 for 19, 211 yards. Bill had 18 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. Now we'll see if they can win because they lost. We'll see if they can win on Christmas because they play at home against Dallas. I was gonna go to that game if Jaden was playing, but but we'll see. Um, man, there you have it, bro. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. It feels so good to be back. It feels so good to be able to record a long-standing episode. It feels so good because I haven't done it in a while. When you have a routine of doing this twice a week to not being able to do it for 3 weeks, like that's tough. And it's not like you're trying to take a break. No, you literally can't do it. It feels good to be back. So I appreciate you guys again for sticking with me. I appreciate the patience. Appreciate the people that have sent me suggestions. Means a lot. But we're back and it feels good. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. Same thing with the DSPs. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your DSPs, wherever you like to hear this luscious voice of mine. Please follow, please subscribe, please rate, please comment, please share. It means a lot. I'm trying to grow the podcast unilaterally, and I cannot do it without you guys' help. So, my DSPs, please, please, please follow, subscribe, all that. For my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I post pretty much dailies. That's where I was posting a lot of reels, excuse me, posting a lot of stories when I could do short forms of content. I couldn't do long forms. So I posted a bunch of stories, a bunch of reels. Go check those out if you haven't. That's where I've been for the last 3 weeks. Uh, so yeah, please follow. That's probably the quickest way to get to me. Keep it respectful. I don't mind debating. I don't mind going back and forth in the comments. It just means that you're listening to me and you're passionate about whatever the topic is, both in which I care immensely about. So, yeah, just keep it respectful. And I don't mind going back and forth. Again, feels good to be back, man. It feels good to be back. So, until next time, much love.